Okay, welcome back to my channel. As promised, I am going to continue looking at some other relief features. In the last video, we looked at uh, different types of slopes. We looked at concave slopes, convex slopes, terraced or stepped slopes, and straight slopes. We also looked at cliffs, and we said that slopes are basically surfaces, slanted surfaces. Today we are going to look at some lowland features. Some of the features that we associate with lowlands are plains, valleys, and surface depressions. A plain is an extensive area of lowland where there is no significant change in height. Valleys are lowland with highlands on either sides. The land slopes down on three sides and slopes upwards on one side. A depression is a sunken land. It's a hole in the ground, or it is where the land is rising on all sides. So the diagram that you are seeing in front of you is showing a hill to the left, but as we go right, we notice as we go across, we are not, the height is not changing. We are neither going up nor down. So we say that this area is a plain. If you look to the right, you notice that there is a map depicting the same thing. So we see a highland being shown to the left. And notice, because this area is an area of highland, we are seeing contour lines showing that the land is rising from 200 to 400 and then to 600. But if we move towards the right, we notice that there is an absence of contour lines. The reason there is no contour line is because over on that side, the height is not changing at all. So we don't need to put any line, any contour lines there. So on a map, a plane is represented by the absence of contour lines. Now, planes are very significant. They are useful because it is easy for construction to take place. Construction of roads, construction of buildings. When we compare roads that are constructed along plains compared to roads that we find in hilly areas, the roads tend to be straight, whereas the roads in hilly areas tend to be winding because they have to be built around the contours. All right, so not only is it easier for the construction of roads and buildings, it is also less expensive. All right, plains are also useful when it comes on to agriculture. So that is why we find a lot of large-scale commercial agriculture in the Caribbean located along coastal plains, because it's easier for machinery to be operated in areas where there are plains. Okay, so another lowland feature is a valley. And a valley is basically a lowland that has highlands on either sides. So if we look on the diagram to the right, we notice that there is a lowland through which a river is flowing, and on either side we see highlands. This, of course, would be the upper course of the river, where no significant area of plain has been created as yet. All right, notice what is happening. The land is rising on this side, and it is rising from this side as well. The river is also flowing down, so it means that it is rising from this side too, and then it is descending in this direction. So there are three areas where the land is rising, three directions, and one direction where the land is descending. Okay. Notice also that these V-shaped valleys are usually associated with highland areas that we call spurs. So this area right here, this is a spur, this is a spur. All right, it is a highland that is jutting out or projecting towards lower land. If we turn to the map, we see our valley, and the valley is marked by V-shaped contours. Now, let's just put on some numbers on our contour lines. Let's call that 100, 200, 300. This is 400, so this is 500. This is 600, this is 700. I'm just trying to make it a little easier for me. All right, so notice that the V is pointing towards the areas of higher contour values. On either side, over here, we have a spur. The spur is similar to the valley in that it is bending also, but it bends more in a U shape than a V shape, and it is bending towards lower ground or lower contour values. All right, so right here we have a spur, right here we also have a spur, and right here we have our valley. All right, so that is how we identify our spurs and our valleys on topographic maps. Valleys, of course, will vary from one place to another. So even along a river's course, as we said, that this is obviously showing an area that is in the upper course. But what usually happens is that as we move closer to the mouth, the valleys tend to get wider, and as they get wider, the spurs are usually eroded away. And as the spurs are eroded away, they give rise to the formation of plains. So what you'll find is that the valley gets more opened as you move away from the source to the mouth. And as you near the mouth, we usually no longer see a valley, but we start seeing a plain. All right. All right, so what we're looking at in this diagram, notice we have this area. This area is generally a plain, but notice when it comes to right here, at this point, the land starts to sink downwards. All right, so this is a depression that we are looking at. The land is going down, and it's going down in all directions. All directions. So when we looked at the valley a while ago, we saw the land descending, but it was descending in 3 directions. In this case, the land is descending in all directions. It's going down all around. So this forms a little hole in the ground. Over here, we see how these are depicted on maps. So what we usually see is something that looks like a hill, but it's not a hill. What we need to look at is how the contour values are changing. Notice the contour values are changing, are decreasing as we move towards the center, which shows that the land is getting lower and lower towards the middle. You will also find some tick marks on many of the topographic maps depicting depressions. What I would encourage you to do when you are reading a map, you need to always examine the key first, because even though there are some standard symbols, you'll find that the symbols will vary a bit from one country to another. So you need to familiarize yourself with the actual symbol that is being used. Sometimes the symbols used for depressions on maps, they look similar to the contour line, but they have a slightly different shade. So you have to pay attention to this. So what we're seeing here, notice on the diagram, we have this highland area, then we get into, so the land goes down like that, and then it's now going across because it's like a plane where there's no change in the height, and then it starts going down, right? So it goes down like this because we're moving down the slope, then it goes across because right here would be a plane, and then when it reaches the depression, it starts sinking again. This is what is happening here too. It is going down, then it goes across. Notice there's no contour line at this point. And the land, notice this is 200 and this is 200. So the height from the bottom of the slope to the top of the depression is the same thing because we're just going across. But after we've passed the top of the depression, then the land begins to sink. Okay. All right. So now I want you to look at these photographs, and I want you to identify the landforms that we have. All right. So we have A, B, and C. Can you tell what feature represents A, or which feature is represented by A, which feature is represented by B, and which feature is represented by C? All right, notice at A, there is no significant change in the height of the land as we move across. So it is an extensive area of flat lowland. So A, therefore, is It's a plain. Notice at B that the land is descending on this side, it is descending on this side, and it is descending from this side. Or we could say that it's rising on this side, rising on this side, and rising on this side. Depending on how we're looking at it. So it's rising in this direction, this direction, this direction, and then it's descending in this direction. So what we're looking at is a valley, and this is a V-shaped valley. Notice the plane has not been created as yet. And so what we see here are our spurs. Our spurs are our highland areas that are jutting out towards the lowland area, which in this case is a valley. All right, and then this one, notice we go across and then the land begins to sink, and it is sinking all around, all around. So all the area of land around this sunken area is higher than it. So this is our depression. So over here we have our valley, and right here we have our depressions. Of course, depressions are associated with limestone areas. We can also find depressions in volcanic areas, for example, where we have our cones. That's the top of it has a crater, which is a depression. Sometimes you can have, in some volcanic areas, you can have the top of the volcano collapsing and creating an even larger depression. But this depression that we have here is not a depression associated with volcanic activity. It's actually a limestone depression. All right, remember, limestone depressions are of different types. So we have sinkholes or swallow hole if a river is moving down through it. Then we have dolines, which are bigger than the sinkholes. Then larger than a doline, we have uvala, and then we have pulgey. All of these are landforms that are created in limestone areas by the process of carbonation. So we have sinkholes, or we call them swallow holes if rivers are disappearing through them. We have dolines, we have uvalas, and then we have pulgeys, all created as a result of carbonation. All right. When it comes on to swallow holes, rivers may disappear and then they may flow beneath the surface. Usually they create caves and form cave systems. And you know, within our caves, we usually find our stalactites on the roof of the caves and our stalagmites on the floor of the caves. And then we might have our stalactites and stalagmites meeting up to form pillars. All right, so I want to encourage you to practice. The more you practice, the more you interact with the information, the more it's going to stick. Okay? All right, so if you've learned something, if you've enjoyed this video, I'm going to ask you to like, to share, and to subscribe. Thank you for watching.